when we come back. The Claire Witch Files.
We're chatting right now in the dark room at dark30radio.com. You don't need the internet to listen to the Mutual Broadcast Network. We're in the new age.
Yes!
You can even listen on one of those old phones. As long as you have minutes, dial 641-552-5166 and hear MBN 24/7.
That's awesome!
641-552-5166. The Mutual Broadcast Network. The next generation of talk radio. Is taking you on a ride to Dark 30. We invite you to call toll-free 855-952-TALK or search Skype for Dark 30 Radio and click in. From the Mutual Broadcast Network, this is Dark 30.
Ghost Stories still fair game. 855-952-TALK 8255 or the Skype is Dark 30 Radio. We're chatting in Paranormal Into the Night on Facebook and at the Dark Room. Looks like everybody has migrated over to the Facebook chat. We appreciate you so quickly latching on to what sometimes can change like that when we find wonderful people who want to help us grow week by week, month by month, day by day, show by show. We are now at 114 as far as episodes are concerned. Coming up next on the program, we've got a fine young lady on the program by the name of Claire Elliott of the Claire Witch Files. Much like me, she is a skeptic who wants to believe. And it might just take a little bit of proof, not an awful lot of proof, but more proof than we have gotten on any of these topics so far over time. Now, Claire's fascination with the paranormal started, like it does for many of the people that I talk to on this program, at a very young age. She was listening to her mother's ghost stories and desperately wanted to see a ghost. As a child, did she? Well, right now, Claire is studying for her MSc in paranormal belief and also in EVP's electronic voice phenomenon, and her research includes the psychology of ghost hunting and paranormal perception. You know what other people, except you and I, think when you discuss these topics to them? They roll their eyes and they label you the tinfoil hat-wearing crowd. So she actually studies the perception of the paranormal by the public. She also goes ghost hunting. So much like my previous guest, we're going to talk about that subject tonight in a little bit more in depth from a different perspective. Because not everybody thinks the same. Not everybody has the same experiences. And I know that that is the truth when it comes to Claire Elliott, a member of the British Psychological Society, the Society for Psychical Research. I used to call that physical research before I looked and said, oh, they're actually talking about psychic, not physics. And she's a psychology consultant at Ghost Tours UK. Her website is clairewitchfiles.com. Get ready for the accent from Manchester, United Kingdom. Claire Witch, welcome to the program.
Hello.
Say that
Great
again?
to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. 5:30 in the morning, huh? My goodness.
It's light though, so
Have you had your
woken up with the dawn.
Have you had the coffee yet? Do you drink coffee?
No, not coffee. I've had a cup of tea though.
Cup of tea.
That should be enough.
It sounds
Very British.
That sounds more down my alley as well. So
Yep.
we mentioned that as a child, you used to listen to your mother's ghost stories.
Yes, that's right. My mum has still the best ghost story I've ever heard. She was with a friend, so she's got two people saw exactly the same thing. And I remember at the time I was fascinated by that story. And I think I know that's where it all stems from. Do you want me to go talk about the ghost story?
I would love to hear what really got you involved to go down this line of work.
Sure. Well, she was quite young at the time. She was only in her teens, visiting family in Yorkshire. And they went out to the cinema in the evening. And on the way back, they got some chips from the local chippy. So they were on their way home, and they thought they might be having their tea as well. So they thought they'd walk a longer way home so they could finish the chips before they got home. So they went a longer way round. And as they were going down a road, the street lights were about to stop, because it was like a country road. They're about to turn around. And then all of a sudden, my mum saw a lady. It looked like she was on a bicycle behind a wall, just sort of gliding across. And out of the corner of her vision, she thought it was just someone on a bike. And it wasn't until she looked round that she saw that it was actually a woman in a full Victorian dress with a parasol and a floating skirt. And she actually wasn't on a bike. She was gliding across the road in front of them and then went into a field just over to the other side and then disappeared.
So wait, she went through the bike?
No, she wasn't on a bike. That's what she thought she was doing, because she just saw someone gliding rather than walking, and thought, oh, there must be somebody coming up with us, on a bike. But actually, when she came in front of their vision, she was literally no bike, just gliding.
So a gliding,
almost see-through.
Yeah. And so that is a typical report, is it not? We've heard of people who report full body apparitions, but see-through is another common one as well.
Exactly. My mum said it's a bit like a sort of like a see-through image. There was detail there, but it was see-through, so it wasn't a real person. They turned to each other and they both saw the same thing. And then when they got home, they found out that there was a house on that road, and the girl that used to live there sleptwalked. And unfortunately, one night, the servant didn't lock the front door, and she went out the front door in her sleep, walked into the field, and drowned in a lake. Which is where she was last seen. So they didn't know that story before. They were just visiting the area. So I remember at the time when I was younger, I was like, wow, ghosts definitely exist, and I want to see one.
Why did you want to see a ghost? I mean, is it because your mom had told you, or was there something else? You wanted to see what a ghost looked like yourself?
Definitely. I've always been fascinated by the paranormal. Mum has some other stories, but that was the main one.
Are ghosts paranormal in your mind?
Well, of course, now I'm a skeptic, so I don't think they exist. But I was convinced as a child.
You were convinced as a child, but now you don't believe they exist.
Exactly. So I would describe myself as open-minded back then, through my teens and into my early 20s. But studying psychology has made me skeptical as I read around the subject, and I started to understand how our perception is constructed and how we can think we see what we see, but actually we might unintentionally be fooling ourselves.
What are they then if they're not ghosts?
Well, obviously I'm a skeptic, but I'm not going to say that ghosts definitely don't exist. I don't know that. None of us do. What I think is that the vast majority of cases, if not all cases, are psychology or environment in some way. So, for the vast majority of the cases, it will be a misinterpretation of what people see, or it could be hallucination, it could be sleep paralysis. It's a very common condition. I have that myself. I have seen things that aren't there.
Like what?
Well, because I'm a skeptic, I know they're not real, but they can be quite scary. But I watch a lot of horror films, so my perception is influenced by what I've seen. So the weirdest one was, American Horror Story.
Yes.
Series 1, The Rubber Man. It was a very scary character. I saw him in my room. I've also seen a UFO that was covered in tinfoil, like a really rubbish UFO. But the scariest ones is where, because obviously with sleep paralysis, you can't move. So you think you wake up. This is my perception. I open my eyes in my room, I see something, and then a few seconds later I open my eyes for real. Most of the time, that's only a couple of seconds, and I know what it is, and I wake up and I think, oh, that was a bit weird. But the occasions that it has been very scary, it's gone on a few seconds too long. So the last time I had it, which was quite scary, it was actually a woman floating above me, and her face was just forming as I woke up. And I had it felt like I was in bed, I pulled the covers up, and it just went on too many seconds too long, that by the time I woke up, my heart was racing and I was really scared. I knew it wasn't real, but it's that thing of you can't move and there's something in your room and it's scary, and for a split second I probably thought it was real because it was just that little bit too long that it went on for. But most of the time, to be honest, I see spiders because I am phobic of spiders.
So
that's more about me, I think.
When Claire doesn't see ghosts, she sees spiders. What will it take for her to believe? We'll talk about that with the Claire Witch Files next.
Jeremy Scott is taking you on a ride to Dark 30. We invite you to call toll-free 855-952-TALK or search Skype for Dark 30 Radio and click in. From the Mutual Broadcast Network, this is Dark 30.
Tonight, the Claire Witch Files. My guest is Claire Witch, Claire Elliott, and her website is, well, of course, linked up at dark30radio.com, but for those who want to point right to it, clairewitchfiles.com, C-L-A-I-R-E, witchfiles.com. Why did you come up with that name, Claire?
I was trying to think of something a bit different. I do kind of look like a witch. I've got long dark hair. I'm very pale.
Wow, so is that a compliment? Usually, if I called someone a witch, I would be looked at, in a totally different light. But I guess if you're calling yourself you looking like a witch, I guess that's okay.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, I'm using it for the right reasons. But that's the reason I chose that, and I was kind of. It came, a lot of the things I looked at people had already taken. So the Claire Witch Files is kind of a mashup of Blair Witch and the X-Files, and that's where it came from.
Now, you kind of say if Mulder and Scully had a kid, that would be you.
Yes, I am their love child, a skeptic who wants to believe. And that's true because belief in the paranormal is quite adaptive in a lot of scenarios, and also there is research to suggest that belief in the paranormal enhances people's mental well-being, of course, as well, because a lot of things in paranormal belief are very comforting, particularly for people, unfortunately, who've lost loved ones. It is nice to believe that there is something out there, and I would like that to be the case, just unfortunately I don't think there is. Now, I may be proved wrong, of course, in the future.
You mean like alien life?
I'm thinking life after death.
Oh.
So my main research area is contacting the dead, so communication with the spirit world, and ghost hunting and things like that. So that's where my main interest lies. And like I say, that can be quite comforting. I've spoken to a lot of people who's been to see mediums after the loss of a loved one, and they have found it very beneficial. And I'm quite okay with that. I'm not one of these skeptics who will bang the drum and say, you're all delusional, don't see a medium, don't do this, don't do that, because it does have a benefit. Although obviously people do have to be critical in their thinking.
Are you psychic?
No, not at all. At university, I have taken part in some ESP experiments, and I am rubbish. Even with people I know very well, I'm not. I've got quite good intuition in social situations, but that's obviously just sort of reading the room. But actually, sort of mind-to-mind communication, I am rubbish.
What is it going to take for you to believe? And by believe, I mean in ghosts.
I think, and I still do want to see a ghost, I think for most people, the level of belief is a full apparition in front of you when you're fully awake. That is the gold standard. Those kind of sightings only account for about 1% of reported sightings. They are very, very rare. For me, that would be it. I have had experiences I can't explain. I have rationalised them over the years, but for me, that would be what I would need to believe. But like I say, I have had things that have happened that are a bit odd, a bit spooky, and I think I can explain them, but, you know, I'm just closed-minded.
You've never been touched by a ghost?
No. No, I haven't. I think I would be pretty scared if that happened.
I've been touched twice.
Have you?
Just recently.
Yeah. Oh, right, okay.
We got a call from South Carolina. Hi, you're on Dark 30 with Claire Witch.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
Just fine. My name's Lanny.
Hi, Lanny.
Hi.
The question I have is, I suffer from sleep paralysis on a nightly basis, every night without fail. And when I experience this, my eyes fly open. I can't move, but I see it's like a black mist or smoke forming over me, and I smell perfume. And I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to think about it. I don't even know how to go about what to think about. I don't even know what I don't know. You know?
What does it smell like?
So my question is, what could that symbolize something?
Maybe. I mean, it would be unusual to get sleep paralysis every night. I only get it when I'm stressed, so I probably get it a couple of times a month. So how long does it go on for? Is it sort of a few minutes, few seconds?
Well, I'll go to sleep, and I say I'll sleep maybe a couple hours. And this is even if I take a sleeping aid, something that should knock me out. Yeah. It wakes me up within a couple of hours. And then, after all this, I'm so stressed out, and I guess my adrenaline is going so hard that I can't go back to sleep for another 4 or 5 hours.
It does sound very scary.
When I do go back to sleep, it'll do it again. And when I do this, sometimes I know it's happened to me up to 5 times in one night.
Wow, that is a lot.
And I don't have insurance or anything, and it costs like $180 here to go do a sleep study, and I don't have that kind of time or money.
Yeah. So, have you looked online at all at any sort of, support networks or to get more information on it?
No, the only thing I've done is tried to Google stuff, and there's a supporter of this show that I've talked to, and he's told me the same thing. You need to try to find something that, some kind of support system or something that can help you, some people that can help you look into this, and I just don't know where to turn.
Do you
have any resources, Claire? Do you have maybe a list of resources?
No, there is. I think there's something called the Sleep Paralysis Project in the UK. I'm not sure if they are international or not. I could certainly have a look, and get back to you on that. I mean, the sleep paralysis is very common. It is unusual to have it that often. I mean, obviously, I would say speak to your doctor in case there's something sort of underlying it. But like I say, it is unusual to have it so often. But lack of sleep can be hugely debilitating. So I'm really sorry to hear that you've had that. It must be, very, very draining for you. I mean, just waking up for me.
Basically, it started. See, I was a truck driver for 15 years. I was forced off the road due to health complications, and it seemed like right after I come off the road is when it started. You know, and I haven't driven a truck, Lord, 10 years now, 5 years now. And surely I'm still not getting used to being off the road after 5 years, you know. I mean, I should already be used to sleeping in the same bed every night.
Hey, Lanny, we're coming up towards the end of the hour. What did the perfume smell like?
It's just a sweet lilac smell. I mean, and I don't have any kind of perfume in my house. I'm a bachelor.
Thanks for the call. We appreciate that. That's Lanny in South Carolina checking in from Paranormal Into the Night, the Facebook group on, well, of course, Facebook. And when we come back, more with Claire Elliott, the Claire Witch Files. Dark 30 rolls on. The freshest show in paranormal on the Mutual Broadcast Network.
Want to take a ride? Wrong show. How about expanding your consciousness? That was last generation. Want to actually know more when this show is over? Not the other way around. Now you're traveling at the speed of light. In the eternal midnight, somewhere between twilight and the witching hour, where the digital clock is always blinking 12. There is Dark 30.
You are the next new voice of this type of radio broadcast.
Asking the questions to all things paranormal that you really want to know. Are we alone? Is there life after death? What's that in the sky?
My question has been, can we really trust them?
And how the hell do you evict a ghost?
Thank you for doing some great planet work. We need it.
From the cold, dark depths of a secret dungeon, somewhere deep in the remote piney woods of East Texas, you are now entering Dark 30 with Jeremy Scott on the Mutual Broadcast Network.
Well, this makes 6 months that you've been coming here nightly for the freshest show in paranormal that does things just a little bit different. Or maybe you've only been coming here for a couple of nights. In either case, thank you for making this the freshest show in paranormal, because we couldn't do it without you nightly. Another record listening night for us. Thank you so much, friends. Really do mean it. Tonight, my guest here in this second half of the program is Claire Witch, ClaireWitchFiles.com. And we've been talking about experiences with ghosts and with sleep paralysis. And she even mentioned a UFO covered in tinfoil. So you know I'm going to circle back around to that at some particular point in time. Sleep paralysis is one of those things that I have not experienced, at least that I know of. How many times do you say you have experienced that, Claire?
Probably a couple of times a month.
So
it's quite common to get. It's quite common to get sort of hallucinations just before or just after sleep.
And you said usually when you're stressed or whatnot. Why is that?
Well, I also suffer from migraines, and it has been linked to migraines as well. So it's basically, obviously, with sleep, there's different stages. So what happens is when you're moving between REM and alpha sleep. So you have the paralysis of REM sleep, but then the visual imagery of dreaming with the alpha waves in your brain. So you're still dreaming, but you become conscious, awake, but you then, of course, you can't move. So it can be very frightening, especially if you've never had it before.
Do you believe it is a form of an out-of-body experience?
It can be. I mean, I actually have had an out-of-body experience, but it was to do with my migraines. So I actually had the sensation that I was sitting to the right of myself, which was very odd. And you can have those kind of things through sleep and sleep paralysis. And again, it'd be quite scary. I mean, sleep paralysis itself is quite common, but it can go on for a couple of seconds, but some people have had it for almost half an hour, which is pretty frightening.
The longest you've went through is how long?
Normally it's seconds, but the last time it was probably about 20, 30 seconds, I would say, that I couldn't move, so then it was pretty scary.
How common is this, do you believe?
Well, sleep paralysis is very common. most people may only have it a couple of times. I had it a couple of times when I was a child, where I had true sleep paralysis, where I was fully awake and couldn't move, and that was very scary. What I tend to have now is more sleep hallucinations that only go on for a few seconds. But it has been linked, like I say, to migraines, but also things like Parkinson's. So sometimes there are underlying conditions that can bring it on. I would certainly say if anyone suddenly starts to have it, and I've never had it before, or it becomes more frequent, I would definitely say, visit your doctor, because there could be something there a bit more untoward.
Yeah, there's certainly some good advice. So, other than that, you mentioned a UFO covered in tinfoil, and is this something you've experienced during one of these episodes of sleep paralysis?
It was very odd, because at the time I was almost laughing at it. But most of the time like I say, I watch a lot of horror films. I've seen zombies and severed heads and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes it can be quite gruesome. But because it only goes on for a very short time, I'm fully awake before I even realise what's happened. But yeah, I always think I wake up and I am looking at my room. So there's usually something odd in my room. And that's how a lot of ghost sightings, of course, can happen as well. Because if you never had it before, and then all of a sudden you see someone standing in your room, and then they float away or disappear, it would be quite, fair enough to assume that might be a ghost. But it may be sleep paralysis.
Yeah, maybe sleep paralysis. It can explain a lot of things. I had a gentleman on in another program who's discussed this in depth. You're studying right now in a whole bunch of topics there in Manchester. Tell us about your work.
Sure. I'm doing a master's in psychology, and I'm looking at electronic voice phenomena. I'm sure your listeners will know that is the anomalous speech-like sounds recorded on electrical equipment. It's very commonly used by ghost hunters who will take a dictaphone or maybe an old tape recorder and ask questions of spirits, and sometimes they will hear messages back in the recording, or they may use a detuned radio to get live spirit communication. As a skeptic, I think that there are many physical reasons that those messages come through and that they are not paranormal. So I'm looking at whether the psychology of the people who are conducting the research may have something to do with hearing those voices. So I'm looking at people who score highly on levels of things like paranormal belief, haunting phenomena, schizotypy, fantasy proneness, hallucinatory experiences as well. So what I did in my study is I have a listening task where somebody listens to a white noise track, and I tell them that there could be EVP recordings in there, but there isn't. So I'm looking at how many people say that they hear something that actually isn't there, and whether those people score any differently on those questionnaires to people who don't hear anything. So far, the results are showing about a third of people will press the button at least once. So there are a large cohort of people that are hearing something that actually aren't there in the recording. So it's quite fascinating. Because
usually you hear it the other way around. This is something you don't hear in the flesh, and you only hear afterwards. Why the other way around, do you think?
Well, I mean, there are two different ways of doing it. I mean, the newer term, instrumental transcommunication, covers any kind of electrical equipment for contacting the dead. So people now will use computers and things like that. And the Kinect, the Xbox Kinect, things like that. The traditional method of EVP was tape recordings. So you'd have a tape recorder, and then you would hear something on the replay of that tape. Now, obviously, that could be reused tapes. It could be interference. The newer method is live spirit communication. So that will usually be a detuned radio or a radio scanner that goes through the channels and then gets a message back. Now, obviously, the skeptical interpretation of that is that it's picking up radio signals, and that some of those, as they go through, may form a sentence. I mean, I did actually go on a ghost hunt in North Wales, and we had Welsh speakers in our group, and they were asking questions in Welsh and actually heard messages back in Welsh. Now, there's two explanations to that. Either because they speak Welsh, they are hearing something in there that is of their language, or those ghosts spoke Welsh. So I know which one I would go for, but obviously there's two explanations.
Which is?
Well, as a skeptic, I would say they're hearing it because they understand that language. I mean, there have been quite a few EVP researchers in the past, Konstantin Raudiv and Fredrik Jürgensen. Now, Raudiv spoke several languages, and he heard EVP messages in English, German, Latvian. Now, again, is that because he spoke those languages? That would be the skeptical interpretation, because people do usually hear what they speak. I mean, the standard joke on some of these ghost hunting programs is they'll say they're looking for Dracula. They'll go to Dracula's castle in Romania and then ask questions of him in English, and then surprisingly he responds in English. I'm not sure that he would have known how to speak English back when he was alive, but I could be wrong.
What else does Claire Elliott, Claire Witch, believe in when it comes to the paranormal? Also, the psychology of ghost hunting and the perception of those of us who believe in all these things paranormal. I'm talking about the public perception. We'll expand more on these topics with Claire Witch after this.
Everything you need to know about Dark 30 is on our website, dark30radio.com.
No, you didn't miss it. The announcement still coming up. Future of this program, all good news. That's still on the horizon. We're talking with Claire Elliott, the Claire Witch Files. The ClaireWitchFiles.com is her website. And we've been talking about her beliefs, a little bit of skepticism involved as well, much like I think is healthy in the paranormal genre, because we can't buy everything hook, line, and sinker. Because that just makes us gullible. Much like Claire, I need proof. You hear it on a nightly basis, maybe to ad nauseum, where I talk about various stories, and I say I just don't buy it. Now, there are other stories that I'm a little bit more, that I buy into a little bit more. Those are more scientifically based. Those are more theoretical. And I'm not sure that you can really weigh theories against each other in the sense that how is this theory any better than another theory? But I think that you agree we can, because some are so far out there, others you can reach out and grab just a little bit more. And so as far as what EVPs are concerned, yeah, I believe along with Claire that they are not paranormal. That they are something that we probably could explain if we knew what they were. And we talked about ghosts earlier, and after wanting to see them as a child, Claire believes now that they do not exist. So the question is, what are ghosts? Are ghosts anything that are paranormal? Because in my mind, it is something more natural. It is something that happens within our consciousness, that is within every living thing, that when we should pass, a little piece of us sticks behind. Do you believe in that, Claire?
No, I'm a materialist, so unfortunately I think that death is the end, but that doesn't mean to say I'm right. None of us know. There is a lot of evidence that people, experience, things that people experience that are counter to that. I mean, there's quite a lot of, when I speak to people, a lot of people have had experiences shortly after someone has died where they feel that they have made contact with them. And that's quite common, I think more common than actually people report.
Well, I always ask people if they don't believe in consciousness succeeding us in death, then how else do you describe contact with the afterlife?
Well, obviously, after somebody's died, there's still that expectation that you are going to see that person because they've been with you, so many years before. So that would be the way I explain it. But to say that those experiences can be very comforting for people, and I would not want to take that away from them. I certainly wouldn't want to be dismissive of people's experience. They can be very comforting, and who knows, they could be genuine. The difficulty with the paranormal is you cannot prove it. I mean, although I'm a skeptic, I am I wouldn't call myself a soft skeptic. That sounds bad, but I am more than happy to speak to people who've had paranormal experiences, and I'm eager to learn what people have experienced, because we don't know the answers, and those experiences are real to them. They are comforting, and I'm not going to sit here and say they're not genuine. It's just I have not seen enough to prove to me that these things exist. That's not to say that's not going to happen in the future. I could become a passionate believer if I had something that happened to me that I couldn't refute.
You've never
I do find it fascinating.
You've never had the sensation that someone was watching you?
I have, actually, yes. I have only had one paranormal experience, which was the sense of presence. I was staying in a holiday cottage in the Lake District, which was quite old, actually. So we'd been there a few hundred years. And the first night, I went to sleep, but then woke up, and it wasn't sleep paralysis, I was fully awake, and had the sensation that somebody, male, bizarrely, was standing over me, watching me very close to my face, and I was too scared to turn the light on, and I hid under the covers until I fell asleep. Now, the next day, I went and read the visitor's book for the cottage, and it did actually mention a ghost. Now, back then, that was probably about 10 or 15 years ago, I was then convinced, yes, this place is haunted. I have felt a ghost. I actually went back to that cottage 10 years later when I started my masters,
and
just to see if my experience was any different. I don't know. I mean, I got no sense of it being spooky. It didn't happen again. I didn't sense there was an atmosphere, which I had done previously. Now, there's two ways to explain that. Either I went back as a skeptic and didn't experience those things because they weren't there, and I was sort of interpreting experience differently, or it could be that I became close-minded, and therefore, if there was anything there, it couldn't get through. So
how could you
I'll let your listeners decide.
Yeah, how could you tell that this presence was of male persuasion? Because I've heard from other people that they could sense sex.
Yes, I don't know, to be honest. It was just a feeling. I mean, the cottage itself was the birthplace of a famous scientist who was male, so that could have fed into my perception of it. And I didn't see anything. It was only the sense. But yeah, it was just a feeling. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
But very strange.
Do you think that it all comes down to energy? That maybe it's not a ghost, maybe it's not a spirit, maybe it's not an apparition, maybe it's not a shadow person, maybe it's not even an alien, whatever term you want to use, but that it's all just energy and it's something of natural origin?
It could be. Yeah, it certainly could be. I mean, the difficulty with arguments of saying that it's energy is, I'm not a scientist by any means, but for the sort of scientific community, it's very amorphous. So what does that energy mean? What kind of energy are we talking about? Like I say, I'm a materialist, so I kind of only only believe in the energy that I'm aware of, if you know what I mean. But then again, maybe I'm just not tuned in. I mean, I have spoken to a lot of people who, I've spoken to good people. We've got a medium in our ghost hunting group as well, and I've spoken to other people, just literally people off the street who see things, hear things, they have contact with relatives. I mean, I actually have had a couple of people who have brought through my grandparents, and the information they brought through was pretty much 100% accurate. Again, I rationalised that experience, but it was quite difficult for me at the time, because as a non-believer, to hear what your grandparents are saying about you, and the information that came through, including their names, was correct. It is difficult sometimes to stay sceptical, but the people do experience these things, and they have perceptions that you and I don't have. And who's to say our perception is the same as someone else's? Some people, just because I don't see anything or hear anything, doesn't mean to say other people don't, and that is a real thing. We just, maybe, you, me, or whoever, we just aren't tuned in. We don't have that part of our brain that's sort of switched on.
We'll come back for one more segment with Claire Elliott talking Claire Witch Files. We're going to get into the psychology of it all and more in the final half hour. I'm Jeremy Scott. It's the freshest show in paranormal. Dark 30 on the Mutual Broadcast Network.
Jeremy Scott is exploring the abnormal world of paranormal on Dark 30. Call toll-free 855-952-TALK or Skype in at Dark 30 Radio.
Hey, in about 15 minutes, I'm going to make an announcement that you're probably going to want to be right here for. So just fair warning, it's all good, so stick around the radio. It's our final segment here with Claire Witch. We're talking the Claire Witch Files tonight to look ahead at what we've got later in the week. Tomorrow, shamanic practitioner, ordained minister, and certified medium and national spiritualist teacher Constanza Morningstar. Also, we're going to be talking about the paranormal and the esoteric with Mark Anthony Wyatt. On Wednesday, pagan rituals and more with Jason Mankey. And paranormal investigator Richard Estep talks about the world's most haunted hospitals and In Search of the Paranormal. On Thursday, CubeSat, you've probably heard of it. It's a satellite that has been launched for UFO research, and Dave Schock is the man behind it. He's going to be here on Thursday's program. On Friday, we're going to talk with Curtis Childs about the mind-body-soul connection, and as well, Greg Lawson investigating the paranormal from the perspective of a professional law enforcement detective. All of the paranormal, according to Claire Witch, tonight here on the program. And you are examining the psychology of ghost hunting. What have you found?
That's it. Well, I started going ghost hunting a few years ago, and I was fascinated by the fact that something could happen, but within the group, different people would experience that and interpret that differently. So we'd be stood in a dark room, and then someone else in the group would say, oh, I can see someone stood in the corner, they've got this hat on, they look like a cavalier, and it was all quite detailed, yet I couldn't see anything. And I was fascinated by the fact that they could see something and I couldn't, and what was different about me, what was different about them. And it was when I started reading up on psychology that I realised that the psychology of paranormal perception was actually something people studied before. I had psychology I was interested in, and then also the paranormal. I never realised you could actually combine those two, so I was quite pleased when I realised I could actually research what I was interested in. And yeah, just found it really fascinating. And it was EVP itself that I became interested in, partly because it is such a common method of ghost hunting. I watch a lot of paranormal programs, a lot of ghost hunting programs like Ghost Adventures and things like that, and it's used quite a lot because it's quite a cheap method, but also gets quite good results as well.
Are you mainly watching those for the entertainment value?
Well, they always have that caveat to start with, don't they? But I mean, in the UK, Most Haunted was obviously our go-to ghost hunting program, and we're quite fortunate now. We do get a lot of the American shows that have come onto Freeview, because I don't have Sky myself. But yeah, I love all those. So Paranormal Thursdays on Really TV, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, Haunted Highway, all those. I have watched all of them. I absolutely love them, and they are interesting from a psychology point of view, but also, like you say, from an entertainment point of view, because I think there is a difficulty with ghost hunting. If you actually go on a ghost hunt, it's quite boring, and that's not to put people off. You should definitely go to one, but not a lot happens. It's not like the TV shows. You'll be sitting in a room for hours and there'll just be a couple of creaks and that's it. But then again, you can get things that happen that are difficult to explain and are genuinely interesting. You also get to go to some really fascinating places as well. So always choose a nice stately home that's got a roaring fire, and if you can have a roast dinner in the evening as well, it's a really good night out.
I'm interested in why you investigate something in which you do not believe, in ghosts, in the psychology of ghost hunting. Is it because you're hoping that your research sometime or someday does lead you back to believing like you did as a child?
Pretty much. I mean, you're not the first person to have asked me that question. A lot of people will say, why are you hunting for ghosts when you don't believe in ghosts? But I've always been fascinated by the paranormal, and I am, like a lot of skeptics, I suppose I'm kind of being honest by saying I genuinely would like to believe, because I used to believe, and it was comforting and it was fascinating. You know, when you hear a story and you get those goosebumps, it's everybody loves to hear a good ghost story. So yes, I would like to believe, but equally I genuinely would like to have paranormal experiences that I can't explain, because I do like to be challenged. So if I do go on a ghost hunt and something odd happens, I think, oh, that's really interesting. Well, what's all that about? Can I explain that, or can't I explain it? So I've not yet had the experience I can't explain, but the best place to be if I want to see a ghost and have a paranormal experience is on a ghost hunt, of course. So
yeah.
that's my plan.
Mm-hmm. Claire, what are you hoping that you find?
Well, obviously, I'd like to see a ghost. I would love that. A lot of people say to me, "Wouldn't you be scared?" But I'm just fascinated by it. So I'm one of those people that would love to go to a haunted house. I'm not. A lot of people are just too scared to go. I like to put myself in those kind of environments because I would love to see one. But people do say if you want to see a ghost, you won't see one, and that's certainly how I felt when I was younger, because I always wanted to see a ghost when I was young, desperately wanted to see one, and I didn't. And people would say to me, it's because you want to see one that you haven't seen one. But then again, obviously, me as a skeptic now would say that's because they're not there. But I would like to be proved wrong.
Paranormal perception, by that, do you mean the perception of the paranormal by those who do not believe?
Well, the technical term is probably anomalous experiences. So it's looking at, obviously we all have odd experiences, but not everyone will interpret those as paranormal. So what a lot of people look at in psychology is something happens, and it's how people interpret it, and do those people have possibly slightly different thinking styles to other people. So in most research, we're kind of interested in the high and low scores on paranormal belief. Most of us are in the middle range, and most people are open-minded in the middle range, but we're looking at the extreme skeptics and extreme paranormal believers who possibly may jump to a conclusion which, you know, the skeptic would say is an incorrect conclusion. So there's two different types of error in statistics. There's a type 1 and a type 2 error. So some people say that paranormal believers are committing a type 1 error, and that's when there isn't something there but you think there is, so it's a false positive. But equally, skeptics are sometimes said that they commit type 2 error, which is where there is something there and they miss it. Now, a type 1 error is very adaptive for our ancestors. If you're in the jungle and there's a rustling in the bushes, you're going to survive. If you think that might actually be a tiger and it's going to eat me, I'll run away. Or to think, oh, it's just nothing, it's the breeze, and then you get eaten. So we have a tendency to make a type 1 error, but equally, skeptics could be making a type 2 error and miss something that is actually there.
Do you think that there's a problem with the perception of the paranormal from the outside, given there are people that give it a bad name from the inside?
Yes, very much so. I mean, I like to occupy the middle ground. So whilst I'm a skeptic, I'd like to believe, and I'll talk to anyone. I'm fascinated about people's paranormal experiences. I do think, unfortunately, over the last few years, there has been a polarisation in the debate. So paranormal believers have become more, strong in their belief, and equally skeptics have become more strong in their belief. And I don't think that helps constructive debate. And I, with what I'm doing, my research and obviously my website and various other things, I'm hoping to try and sort of promote constructive debate on the paranormal, because none of us know what's out there. We don't know. I think ghosts don't exist, but I don't know that they don't exist. So I think there's an arrogance there to say this is the answer from either side. So I think, but if people talk to each other and share their experiences and critically think about those experiences equally on both sides, I think we get somewhere.
Claire, the best to you. I really appreciate you coming on the program.
Thank
Do you have some final words for my audience here tonight?
No, I would just say, stay spooky. Go ghost hunting if you want to. It's a great experience to have, but equally, with your own experiences or what people tell you, always be critical, but be understanding that what that person's experience is their own genuine experience.
Where can we get in touch with you?
My website is ClaireWitchFiles.com. I'm also on Twitter, ClaireWitchFile. I couldn't fit the S on. ClaireWitchFile on Twitter.
Darn Twitter.
And Facebook page is the Claire Witch Files as well, so join me on there for some interesting paranormal debate.
Twitter always be screwing everything up,
Oh, I know. Well, the thing is, if I didn't have an I in my name, it would have fitted on because when I was born, my father wanted an I in Claire, and my mum didn't. But it was my dad that registered my name, so I've always had an I in it. But without that, it would have all fitted on. So it's his fault.
I guess so. Claire, best to you. We'll be in touch.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Really enjoyed it tonight.
The Claire Witch Files. What do you think about that, ladies and gentlemen? I think that there's something to these ghostly phenomenon. You know, people always are saying that they come across with ghosts, or they come across ghosts, rather. And I, until very recently, was of the mind that they probably existed, but I had no experiences to say that they do. Well, of course, I've had experiences now, so what's my thoughts? I say that ghosts are real, and that they do live on, and so does our consciousness. Because I've been told that multiple times, I've experienced that multiple times, and there's something to it in my mind. 855-952-TALK, 855-952-8255. What's your take on any of the topics we've talked about tonight? It certainly has been wide-ranging.
Dark 30. A new dawn has arisen in paranormal radio. Thanks for joining the revolution.